Hello and welcome to Chicken Chats. We're so glad you're here to talk about chickens with us today. I hope you're flocking to our Facebook page to find out more.
Really?
I can't help myself. I always love a good pun. Maybe I'm just peeping with excitement. I don't know. Well, me and my bad puns. My name is Brittany Sweeney, and I'm the communications manager with the Livestock Conservancy. And I'm so excited to have Jeanette Behringer, our senior program manager and resident poultry expert, with us today. And our extra special guest, Christine Heinrichs, is joining us today from California. Hi, Christine. We're so glad you're here. Jeanette,
very good to be here.
Excellent. Yay. Jeanette, do you want to introduce Christine?
Yeah. Christine and I go way back. We're like this group of chicken chicks that gets together when we had live meetings. We always managed to be in the same place at the same time, at least once or twice a year. And, so Christine's a good chicken buddy of mine. And she was gracious enough to come on to the show. And we were just experiencing before we came on how she and I can very quickly go down a rabbit hole talking about chickens. It's sad but true. And so I'll try and keep us out of those rabbit holes, but keep it fun. But Christine, you're a well-read author. Every time I turn around, I'm seeing something that you've written, whether it's a book or an article. And I guess the main question I'd like to ask first is, how did you get involved with poultry and let it consume your life the way it has?
Well,
it's an addiction.
Yeah, letting it consume my life is probably more complicated. But I was a New Jersey girl. I grew up in the suburbs. I didn't know anything about farms. We'd go out and buy apples from an apple farm. That was about it. So I really I didn't grow up immersed in poultry and knowing anything about chickens. So when I was a mother in San Jose, California during the 1980s, when everything was Silicon Valley and high tech, I had a little girl who said, "Oh, mommy, let's go get some chicks." And of course, I was the kind of sort of spaced out mother who's like, "Oh, okay, honey, you want a pony? You want some chicks? Sure, we'll do that." So I went to this feed store and came home with some chicks and a little pack of chick starter, and I had absolutely no idea what to do with them. So I put them in a laundry basket, and I thought, well, there we are. And of course, they grow up really fast, and I was, needing to get up to speed a lot quicker than I realized. And so I looked around for, information. And in the 80s, backyard chickens were not yet a thing. And there was literally nothing. All the material was about, managing a poultry house of 250,000 chickens. And so I realized at that point, that's one of the big lessons I got from it, is that if you're looking for a book and it's not out there, it probably means you need to write it, because you're probably not the only one looking for it. So anyway, we managed to get through with our chickens, and they grew up and they were beautiful. They were all different colors. They were interesting. They were fun. We got eggs. I mean, this was just, it was just so interesting. And one of the things that I found was, my daughter was, I guess she was about 4 or 5 at that time. We were still in a mommy and me group, and the other mothers would come over, and, they were all married to engineers and veterinarians and accountants. And they would kind of take me aside, sort of like it was a dirty little secret, say, "I always wanted to have chickens." And I realized that there was something out there that was going on with people and chickens, especially women and chickens. But people generally, you just start smiling and laughing when you start talking about chickens, because they're so interesting and so fun. And as Jeanette said, there's so many rat holes you can go down with them. Really, whatever your interest is, chickens are there, because really chickens have accompanied humans through really all of our civilized history. Ever since there's been people. almost every culture, chickens are not quite a cultural universal. Like Eskimos don't have domestic poultry, but really around the world, there almost every culture has some kind of domestic poultry. Usually chickens, often ducks and geese as well.
There was a really interesting comment from last week that stuck with me, and we were talking with our archaeologist friend, Aaron Sasson, who, he's researching early chicken history in America. And the thing that really grabbed him was in coming to the conclusion that if it wasn't for chickens, the San Diego settlement probably wouldn't survive. It wouldn't have survived. And he brought it even further to say, around the world with cultures that have chickens in times of famine and great strife, chickens were the one thing that folks could really latch onto in order to get some reliable food resources. And the last part was he said that it's really interesting to him that in the pandemic, what did so many people turn to this past year was getting backyard chickens. All the hatcheries got sold out, and that observation just really was like, I guess in the back of my head I knew that, but for a historian and archaeologist to say here's the evidence, it was just pretty amazing. And with the you've written quite a few books now, especially through FFA. How did you get started in the writing, and what gave you your first break?
Well, I had this idea as I was learning about chickens and myself. I was realizing how much I didn't know, and so I had to, research it in various ways. And it became clear that there really was a need for a book out there. And so I wrote up a book proposal and I started shopping it around. And eventually, the Voyager Press editor took an interest, and this was about the year 2000. So backyard chickens were becoming a thing at that point, but hadn't really taken off. And so I got a contract to write the book, and I did that, and it went really well. I really enjoyed it. The first edition was kind of a softback, a large format, which was nice. It was good, and I liked it, but then we changed format later. But I felt I was really writing as someone who walked into this knowing nothing and suddenly had to come up to speed. And one of the things that was really interesting to me was the fact that there were different chicken breeds. Like I said, I was a New Jersey girl. I didn't know this. I thought a chicken was a chicken. And so being introduced to that, I got just fascinated by the history and the standard breeds, how important they are, their heritage. And that really kind of introduced me to the romance of chickens and history. And I'd always been interested in the archaeological, the anthropological, the cultural differences. Margaret Mead was a heroine of mine. And so to look at this and you realize that and then to hear that contemporary feeling that my friends had of, gee, this is what I wanted to have, chickens, and they just felt so good. So yeah, and of course kids get along great with chickens. Like you say, it's such an important source of nutrition. If in a poor village, if they can have a flock of chickens, an egg a day in a child's diet really makes the difference between thriving and starving.
And I've heard that from nutritionists that work over there. They struggle with the kids need that animal protein, and just one egg a day, which is, stunning. So chicken just remain such an important food resource. And I wanted to go back to the history and the romance. And you can remember one of the last times you and I saw each other face to face. we had a complete geek fest at the 100th anniversary of the Watt Publishing company, which for our viewers that aren't familiar with the Watt Poultry Art Collection, these were paintings that were commissioned by Watt Poultry for their magazine, and they were done by the three masters of poultry art at the time, Schilling, Stalmer, and Sewell. And if you ever see the Standard of Perfection from the American Poultry Association, many of those paintings are there. But Christine and I were at this meeting and what I found stunning was I don't think the owner of all this artwork realized how important it was to the poultry community. Do you want to talk about that revelation for him? Because it was really pretty funny.
It really was. They were very, very sweet. But they have turned this, what was a poultry magazine, has really become this global livestock conglomerate of publications, and it's a very successful international company now. And so I think that it's kind of pretty far down their list that they in fact own a collection of very rare poultry art. That's very important.
And where were they stored? Do you remember?
Oh, no, I don't remember.
In the basement.
Oh, yeah. They may be back in the basement now. This is one of the reasons I got interested in writing about them. I've always hoped to find a permanent home for that collection where they could all be on display all the time. Mm-hmm. And, that's a yet to be so far. There's just it's expensive to have that kind of thing, but I hope someday to see that art on display for everyone.
Yeah. Now, do you want to?
Sorry, I think you shared some of the pictures. Let me see if I can.
Yes, please share some of those.
Let's see Is this at the barnyard?
No, that's interesting because there actually is. By looking at this old artwork, I think this is 16th century. What's the date on that? It's a Dutch artist, Honda collector, something like that. And by looking at those chickens from centuries ago, it's worthwhile to compare them with what the chickens look like now, how they've been changed, and why. So these old paintings really document important things about livestock.
Absolutely. Let's see. Maybe this is one.
That's one. That's light.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And the remarkable thing about the art is just how close to the actual birds it really is. And they use many of these paintings to show the exact standard you should be shooting for with the birds that you're growing out. So that's why these artists are considered the masters, because they really captured exactly the way those birds should look, an ideal specimen. So, yeah. Do you want to talk about this picture? That's your rabbit hole that you went down.
Yes, that's definitely right. This is by Arthur O. Schilling. It's dated 1924. This is Phoenix chickens, and it's a rather large painting. It's an original oil, and I acquired this a few years ago from a woman it had been in her family since 1933. She wasn't sure where her father acquired it. She thought from an estate sale from some wealthy art collector who'd lost his money in the 1929 crash. And so it had been in her family since then, and she was very fond of it. Now she at that time was 83 years old, and she was concerned about what was going to happen to it when she died. And her family, her children, just were not interested in it. And somehow my name had come to light because I'd written about poultry art, and so she contacted me. So I tried to find a buyer for it. I tried to interest an art dealer in it. I tried to find an auction for it. And the fact is, there's not a very active market in poultry art right now. They're
What?
just, I
How
know.
is that possible?
You know how I think it's possible? The
That's
poultry people
crazy.
don't have any money. I think that's
That's
the
true.
problem.
Okay.
Okay, we're spending our money on chickens. So
Yeah.
yeah, you know, there's just not that. That really was my conclusion, because everyone just loves this artwork, but it's
Mhm.
just it's not a place where people are spending their money right now. It's not that it's not beloved. It's just that it's economically an issue. So
Yeah.
at any rate, I finally said, well, you know, I would love to have it if we aren't able to find another buyer. And so I ended up with it. And it is now in my living room, and I totally love it. It's just a beautiful work. I had it cleaned. It had some dust on it. It was not damaged in any way. A couple of people have raised the point that, of course, what would Phoenix chickens be doing in birch trees? But this is probably done up in somewhere around Rochester, New York, and so that's the foliage that's native up there, even if the chickens are not. But I just feel like it's a very special painting, and I feel very fortunate to have it.
Hmm. It's quite unique among Schilling's work. You don't
Yeah,
see that amount of detail in the background, so it's really quite striking.
and it's
And
really large. It's like 4 feet by 4 feet. It's huge. So um,
yeah, and
I'm absolutely honored.
speaking of the nitpicky nature of chicken people, I know you're a really strong advocate for getting people to understand the APA standard of
Mhm.
perfection. In your words, I mean, you're preaching to the choir here, but if you could share with the audience, why is it so important that you understand these standards when you're raising these birds?
Well, you know, the standard is expresses the genetic treasure that these birds are, and that is one of the things. You know, Jeanette, you have got that great story about talking to an industry representative who said, you know, when you said what should we save, and he said save everything, because we really don't know what's out there.
Yeah, that was
And
actually my boss,
oh, was it?
Allison. She was talking with them, but still, it had a lot of impact.
Exactly, exactly. And we're in a situation where we have narrowed the industry has narrowed the genetic profile of chickens so much that there's nothing there to choose from if any catastrophe happens. And as we've seen, you know, we've gone through COVID this past year. California was just coming out of an exotic Newcastle lockdown when COVID hit. So, you know, these viruses and other pathogens can circulate. They're going to. This is the nature of things. And we have to be able to be resilient and bounce back. And one of the things that the standard breeds can do is that they are the repository of that genetic knowledge from centuries and millennia. I mean, we're talking
Mhm.
about 8,000 years with chickens as domesticated animals. There's a huge amount of variety out there, but if we don't maintain those as standard bred chickens, it will disappear. I mean, it needs every
Oh,
one of
sure.
those dedicated breeders that are working so hard to keep their flocks beautiful and vigorous, and people who keep backyard chickens. You know, everyone who keeps a flock of backyard chickens is supporting that by keeping them, by understanding them, by sharing the knowledge of them, and by enjoying the variety that they have. You know, when I was a new chicken owner and discovered, you know, I and I get these questions all the time, and this is why I don't laugh when people say, like, well, how long do you have to wait for one to lay a brown egg? You know, I get it. I
Yeah.
understand. And it's okay to to not understand that, and to need
Hmm.
to learn it. And that's
Well,
it's knowledge that we've lost.
we always get, do you need a rooster for a hen to lay an egg? I hear that one
Very
a
common.
lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Um,
probably the most common question. And but
yeah.
then that I always use that as a way to get people thinking about, well, all those chickens that are laying eggs for the grocery store, they don't have a rooster. You know, they don't even have room to turn around. So
Yeah, yeah. Now I travel a lot, but my goodness, you do too. And I was wondering if you might share one of your favorite travel stories. I understand that you were out in the UK recently, which is chicken heaven if you're looking at the old
yes.
English breeds. And can you share one of your favorite stories?
Oh gosh, we just had so much fun there. We went to the oh gosh, we went to Dorking, which is the name of the town that has given its name to the Dorking chicken. And they have a museum that, in fact, honors Dorking chickens, among other things. You know, it really does celebrate the history of Dorking, which is as a market town going back to the Roman era. But it's real cute, you know, walking up to it. They have put chicken footprints in the cement walking up to the front door of the museum. You know, they have a sense of
I
humor
love
with
it.
this. And they have actually published a booklet called The Dorking Cockerel at the roundabout, the traffic circle where you enter the town. They have a huge 10-foot tall Dorking chicken sculpture. It's enormous, out of metal. It's beautiful. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's very fun. I wasn't able to connect with Dorking breeders at that time when I was visiting, but I did check in with, gosh, the name of the farm escapes me right now, but it's in southeast London near Greenwich, and they have a living history farm that was created there, and their farm manager is really a poultry guy. So he's
Oh,
keeping a
Mud Shoot
lot.
Farm.
Mud Shoot Farm, of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
Tom Davis, is it?
Tom Davis. Yeah, he's wonderful. Are you
Yeah,
in
I've
touch with
been
him?
there.
Okay.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh,
he's
we
got a
we fell
great.
down the chicken rabbit hole too, he and I.
Yes, he has. So yeah, we
Yeah.
hope to go back this year if travel opens up a bit, and I'd like to also see some of those other English breeds, such as the Orpingtons.
Mhm.
Those I know there's some wonderful Orpington breeders there, and I'd very much like to connect with them.
Mhm.
So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, for the Rhode Island Red, all we had in Rhode Island was this little plaque. It was nothing
Mhm.
really uh too fancy. And I always thought there should be a giant statue because the Rhode Island Red's probably the most famous chicken in the world. And you go to Little Compton and Rhode Island and it's just a plaque. um, but speaking of commemorating, I understand you're about as excited as we are for the Heritage Breed stamps coming out, and it's really quite exciting to see some of these breeds commemorated. And if I remember right, the chicken breed that was chosen is the Golden Lace Wyandotte.
Yes.
That's going to be on there. Yeah, and and I saw that you had uh, put up a picture of a antique stamp with it looked
Mm.
like it was a Brahma on it. What was that from?
Uh,
The
that that's the from 1948, 3 cents, and that was actually honoring Arthur Schilling. That's another Schilling artwork.
Mhm. Oh, that I did not know. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah,
that's
and
yeah.
of course the Brahma at the time was a really influential breed. You know, when the Brahmas first came over from the Orient, they were one of the breeds that kicked off hen fever, which opened up a period where people just went crazy creating new breeds and seeing what they could do from these strange birds from the Orient. And what I find really interesting, even today, I don't know if you remember the viral video of a Brahma that was coming out of the chicken coop,
Yes.
and everybody went crazy for this chicken. They're like, "Oh my God, it's the size of a child!" And he was very impressive. And we were actually going to bring a Brahma chicken up to New York for the network to have on the television station, and we had a very large, beautiful Brahma rooster, tame as a kitten, had all his papers in order for, testing and all that. And then when they found out he wasn't actually the size of a child, they're like, oh, well, never mind. And I'm like, you kidding? This is still a really impressive chicken.
Well, they just
God.
didn't realize how much allure chickens have.
Oh, sure. Brittany, are there any questions for Christine out there?
There are. Let's see. People have been leaving us some comments. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining us today from Alaska. We're so glad you're tuning in.
Hey.
Hi, Audrey. Thanks for joining us from Kansas. We're so glad you're here. Lisa says, the incredible edible egg. Absolutely true. Lisa also says, we have the book, How to Raise Chickens by Christine. We have it here in our collection of poultry books. When our daughter started 4-H and began doing chickens herself, that was the first book we had her read.
I love this. Thank you so much.
That's fabulous. Thank you for sharing that. Hi, Mitch. Thanks for joining us today. We're glad you're here. Mitch was enjoying the artwork from earlier. Hi, April. Thanks for joining us today from Alaska.
Mm-hmm. I love all these Alaska folks. Yeah. One of our grant winners last year was a poultry club up there, the Last Frontier Poultry Club, that's using their grant money to buy cages so that they can have bigger chicken shows in Alaska. So keep up the good work up there.
Absolutely. Hi, Brianne. Thanks for joining us today. Brianne says, what part? I'm in Decatur County. I'm not sure. Let's see. Hi, Ivan. Thanks for joining us today. Ivan says there's far too much genetic research being done on hybrid chickens to increase their productivity. These are becoming Frankenstein birds. Totally correct that heritage breeders who are just like heritage seed savers are preserving the vital genetic diversity. That is true. Sorry, Christine, I've the comments take
okay.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining us today. Elizabeth says, what a great conversation. What do you say to people who say we should not eat chickens, factory or free range?
Well, I have an interesting experience about that. I have a friend who's ate a very strict vegan diet, and she had a lot of, it's not only vegan, but she's, no soy and a lot of other things for food sensitivities. And she had a broken arm that led to the discovery that her bones were very depleted. And her doctor strongly recommended that she start adding some eggs into her diet. And she bought some eggs locally and she just didn't feel right about them. And so I gave her some eggs and she said, the eggs from your chickens have just the right aura. I can eat eggs again. And so I now supply her as a friend with eggs so that she will not have her bones breaking spontaneously. I mean, Elizabeth raises a great point. There's a lot of ethical discussion about this. My feeling is that that's, certainly if people don't want to eat chicken meat or chicken or eggs, that's fine. I mean, it's up to them. But chickens are domestic livestock. And the reason they are domesticated is because they have provided people with meat and eggs for millennia, 8,000 years at least. So I'm okay about that. I would prefer to see factory raised chickens living a better life. I would prefer to see them not in the factory setting. And that's, I feel like if we had standard bred chickens raised in small flocks, we would all be better off, including the chickens. And the way one friend puts it is, every chicken deserves to have a really good life, even if it ends on one really bad day.
Well, even with the one bad day, you can do it with respect and in a humane way. And I find I'm a lot more comfortable with processing chickens on our farm because they're they're in a place they know, they're with people they know. And I really hated taking them to the poultry plant. It was always stressful for them, stressful for me. And as a breeder, I have to put a lot of birds on the ground every year. And people that think they're going to find homes for all their cockerels as pets, that's a pipe dream.
Right.
So I think putting a lot of respect into what you're producing, and it's never easy to butcher them. It never is, and it's not something we look forward to. But that's part of the deal they made being with human beings, is we protect them, we feed them, and in return they feed us. And so I'm okay with that. But you know what? It's perfectly fine if you want to have some as pets, because they make wonderful pets, as Brittany can attest to. She's got a bunch of spoiled chickens that hang off her back porch.
Yes, I eat chickens, but I would never eat, Blondie, you know.
Yeah, that's the trick. Don't name them.
I made that mistake. Yep.
But I think we all learn lessons that way too, about husbandry and about the relationship that we have with animals. I think you make a really good point, Jeanette, that we need to be respectful and caring of all the animals that depend on us for care.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for a great question, Elizabeth. Let's see. April says, keeping chickens in Alaska is an extreme sport.
I bet. What do you keep? What does April keep? That's interesting.
April, let us know. This is
Chanticleers, of course, are cold weather chickens, but there's other breeds. Buckeyes are good.
Excellent.
Wyandottes, certainly.
We're waiting to find out. Lisa says she's a member of the Last Frontier Poultry Association. They're so blessed for the grant and are super excited for the poultry show in 2021. Thanks for that update, Lisa. That's really exciting.
I'm super excited for my hoodie. I ordered a hoodie. They have the most beautiful logo, and it's just so cool to have something from a chicken cub in Alaska. So I'm still waiting for my hoodie, but I'm excited.
That's awesome. Hi, Wendy. Thanks for joining us today. Wendy says, can you explain the difference between Heritage Rhode Island Reds and Industrial Rhode Island Reds and how to tell the difference?
I could take that on. There's a big difference. The industrial birds are usually lighter in color, and they've got some other things in the mix that bumps up egg production. So they're really great layers, but don't expect them to sit on their own eggs and hatch them and be good mothers. They really are a commercial variety designed to lay high volumes of eggs. And with any bird that's laying high volume eggs, they're typically not broody hens, because if they go broody, they stop laying eggs. The real Rhode Island Red has a beautiful deep mahogany red color, and they're best described as a brick with feathers. And so if you look at their body shape, it really is very brick shaped. If you cut off the head, the tail, the feet, and just look at the body, it's long, it's rectangular, and also they're quite broad. They're very good meat chickens. And there are a couple of varieties. A lot of people don't know there's a single comb and a rose comb Rhode Island Red. For places that get really, really cold, the rose comb might actually be a great pick, so they're less prone to frostbite if you're in a super cold place. But Yeah, you put a commercial red and a good old-fashioned Rhode Island red side by side, and it's obvious the difference. The real Rhode Island red is just magnificent, and you know, the commercial ones are very common for backyarders, and typically the Rhode Island reds that you order from most hatcheries will be the commercial type. So that's the basic difference.
Great question, Wendy. Let's see. Hi, Becky. Thanks for joining us today. Becky says, how do you feel about the small farm that keeps several breeds? Is it okay to breed them for personal use, or should we keep only one breed to preserve the genetics?
Well, I'll take that. I think anyone who's breeding chickens is just doing a great job and should do it for whatever reason they want. I think that it's the kind of thing that as you know, if you're breeding them for personal use, I think you're going to find things that attract you. You're going to find the things that you love and you feel are important. And you may go on to decide on keeping only one breed. But all the breeders that I know have gone through exactly that kind of evolution. You know, the top breeders can tell you about, oh, well, I used to keep this and then I decided to keep that. You know, you're just at a stage in becoming, you know, in your poultry journey, and just enjoy it and do what you enjoy best, and you'll find your path.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Becky. Let's see. Ivan, thanks for joining us from Poland. Ivan wants to know, do you think we should be concerned about CFO reared chickens? Recently in Europe, all chicken owners were ordered to keep their birds locked indoors for a period owing to avian flu. This caused huge problems for some owners.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a big one. I mean, that's just like COVID for people. I mean, this is what we're looking at. The industry, because they have so narrowed the genetic framework of their birds, is extremely. I see this industry as balanced on a knife edge, because if some variant of avian influenza gets into those birds, they're devastated, and they have no defense against this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of the MEDAX approach, like we had to do with COVID when we didn't really have a strategy for fighting it better, was to just lock everything down and try and interrupt that biological pathway for transmission of the virus. That's the goal. So, you know, the more isolated those flocks can be kept, the safer everyone's going to be. But this is going to be a continuing problem as long as we are raising birds that are genetically identical by the millions in confined, crowded quarters. It's an ideal breeding ground for raising highly pathogenic viruses.
Well, and I think it's good husbandry practices, period, that you're able to lock your birds in a place that they might be able to stay in for an extended period of time, whether it's a biological concern or even weather related. Mm-hmm. You know, right when we get tornado warnings, the first thing I do is lock in the chickens and you know, have a safe place for them. And the other really important thing is regular health testing. Our flock is on the avian influenza monitoring program, so they get tested twice a year for avian influenza, and my inspector's awesome. She calls me when I'm due, and then the National Poultry Improvement Program, super important health testing program. Typically, you can do it at a very low cost, and the inspector will come in and draw some blood and test the birds right there. And that way you're at least testing for the basic minimum. I mean, there's a host of things chickens can pick up, but this at least helps to weed out, you know, some of the salmonella related diseases and avian influenza. It's low cost and it's peace of mind. And also, if you're going to be selling birds are hatching eggs, you need to have this stuff. Or if you want to show chickens, they have to be tested before you can go to a poultry show. So the other really useful thing we have here in North Carolina, I don't know if it's with all states, but we have an isolated flock, but I'm surrounded by chicken houses. And so whenever there's a disease outbreak, the state flags that on a map. And so if there's anything anywhere near us, I can go into shutdown mode just to be safe and make sure that, because wild birds, they carry stuff. And so if you check with your state veterinary office, you might be able to find a map of, outbreaks. And it might not be avian influenza, but maybe it's laryngotracheitis, which is, not deadly per se, but very, very catchy. And then your birds are carriers of it. So health testing, I think, is really misunderstood by a lot of the backyarders. If you only have a few egg chickens and they're not going anywhere, that's no big deal. But if you're going to be a breeder and selling chickens, you really have to make sure your testing's up to date.
Great question, Ivan. Thank you. Let's see. Oh, April, let us know what she's raising in Alaska. She's got Heritage Rose Comb Rhode Island Reds. They're super layers and winter hardy, and eventually will make a wonderful meal. She also has Silkies, Barred Rocks, Dominiques, Americanas, Easter Eggers, Brahmas, Polish, Swedish flower hens, Rhode Island Red, White Rock, English Buff Orpington, and I think the list continues to the next comment. I love
April
it.
is on board.
That's fantastic. Let's see. Lisa, also in Alaska, says she raises Morans, Faverolles, Welsh Summer, Americanas, Barred Rocks, Barred Plymouth Rocks, Saramas, some Olive and Moss Eggers. She's also raised Black Jersey Giants and Buckeyes. She really suggests Buckeyes for those in cold areas. A lot of people don't know that the Buckeye chicken was the only chicken designed by a woman, Nettie Metcalf, and Buckeyes were also used for the genetics in the Rhode Island Reds. All sorts of great
beautiful
stuff
chickens.
there. Absolutely. Alaska's on board. They got a ton of great heritage breeds up there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We love it.
Well, that's interesting because those feathers are very insulating.
Mm-hmm.
The vulnerable points are the combs and the wattles.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hi, Bob. Thanks for joining us today. We're glad you're here. Bob's joining us from British Columbia, Canada, and he raises Rhode Island Reds as well. All right.
You can see that Rhode Island Red in his little profile circle there. That's the deep, beautiful, dark red they should be, like this, like mahogany kind of. It's just a beautiful color. And it's also, in talking with Rhode Island Red breeders, it's a really challenging color, because, you've got to have some not so great colored birds in the mix in order to get birds with the perfect color, because of the challenge of the genetics of getting that perfect red. And I just have black chickens. That's really easy for me. But people who do reds and buffs, more power to you people, because I know it's challenging colors.
That's great. Thanks, Bob. I think that's all of our questions for right now. Just people letting us know what they're raising, which is awesome. I love it. Keep it coming.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Christine, so much for coming on. This has been great fun. And I know we could chat for hours about chickens, but
oh gosh, yes.
I hope one of these
gotten to the 800, the artwork that someone sent me from Turkey recently from about 800 AD, and it's in a cave in Turkey, and it looks just like a chicken. I'll send it later.
Oh, wow.
So, so I think that I'm definitely going to look into that last week's archaeologist.
Yeah,
discussing
that was a that
Yeah,
was a fun talk. You know, I'm a history nut, so I was geeking on
right.
chickens and history. What? You know, love it.
Well,
But it's
Christine,
been a real pleasure, and I hope we can see each other again soon, face to
Soon.
face, when this is
Yeah.
all over, and you don't have wildfires and power outs and extreme wind events. I might get back to California, maybe, if I get over my PTSD from the last time.
Yeah, it can be daunting. So
Yeah, yeah. Brittany, do we have any last minute words?
Christine, do you want to plug any of your books while we've got
well,
people's
sure.
attention?
Yeah, I have 3 books about how to raise chickens, and this one's out of print, How to Raise Poultry, but it was really one of my favorites to write because it's got all the different species in there, ducks and geese and turkeys and emus and all kinds of stuff. So I really love that. Like I say, it's out of print, but it is available in various places. And I bought some, when they told me that they were not going to publish it anymore. I said, fine, I'll take them. And then, of course, this one's really fun. I think of this as a great chicken starter book. And it's a great gift book because it's got more than 80 breeds of chickens, great pictures. And so I know more than one person who says, I keep that on my bedside table and I go to sleep and dream about my chickens I'll have someday. So,
I love it.
yeah, we do have fun. See, chickens are fun. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
those are through Tractor Supply or, just any online bookstore has them. So,
Absolutely. Well, our shameless plug for the Livestock Conservancy is to become a member. So if you're not a member, please let us know. We would love to hook you up. Our members and supporters, thank you for helping making programs like today possible. We couldn't do chicken chats or any of the species chats without you. So thank you so much. We appreciate all of your love and support. And we hope you'll tune in again next week. We have another microgrant recipient. I think it's Tilly and her mom talking about their chicken egg business. So we're
fun.
excited. And we're just over the moon that you could join us today, Christine. So thank you again so much. This was so interesting and so fun. I learned a lot. So this was great. Any final words, Jeanette or Christine, before we say goodbye?
Just thank you. I'd love to do it again. Always fun.
Yes, it is. Thanks, Christine.
Have a great afternoon, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye.